All right, guys, getting another start on this thing. So I'm going to be pulling the welder out. I've pulled my car out so I can pull the welder out because I always store it in that back corner. And then my blaster's up underneath that cabinet edge over there because I need to pull it out and blast a few little small areas. So the plan for today is I want to get this spare tire well installed in the car. That is just what I want to get done first. And then at that point, the quarter can be getting ready to be put on. However, there's a ton of little tedious work to do. There's a lot of hours right here in this car. Trying to get just these two things completed is going to take a ton of hours. But it's what I always say, more time than money. So this is just what I have to do to save money. And I'm actually going to save a car that otherwise would have been a parts car. I'd already turned this into a parts car, and now it's going to be turned into a driving nice project car again. But I'm stoked. I think it'll be a great little car. But let's see. Well, I guess I just need to get started. All right, so I dug a couple of boxes out of my spare bedroom just to I kind of wanted to get caught up on what all's here, because a lot of this stuff was bought back in, man, I don't even know when. It was right after I sold my Cutlass Salon. I bought all kinds of stuff for that Turbo Buick Century, and that was before I got the car home and seen how bad it actually was. So I decided not to build that car, and I've kind of been stuck with a lot of this stuff since. So it's been stored in the house, so it's in good shape. But anyway, I'm going to run you through some of the little stuff. And when you're trying to take a car that looks like that, in that bad a shape, stripped apart, and it's not been running in probably a decade, it's probably going to take another load of parts like this just to finish it enough to where it runs and drives, you know what I mean? But this is a lot of that little bitty stuff that would nickel and dime you to death. And so I'll kind of run you through what I got going on. Now, still in this big box, there's a couple little things. There's an intake gasket set for the intake manifold. Now I'm going to be building a cold air set kit on the car myself out of mandrel bent pipe, 4-inch I think, or 3-inch, I don't remember. But anyway, I'm going to buy one of those cast aluminum carb hats like you'd use for like a Pro Charger, a blow-through style application, because it's a little bit bigger and it'll flow better than the factory one. And I may run into hood clearance problems with that, so I'm going to put a bump on the hood on that side and make it look like the Turbo Buick. But anyway, I have a Vibrant hump hose. This has a hump in the center so it can flex, so it can move. This will be from the carb hat to the cold air steel pipe. And then here's a cone filter that I'm going to put on there. I can't find my front shocks, and I did find both shocks, but I just brought one out here for this is a rear shock. I've got those, but I know I got the fronts. I'm just not sure where they are. They may be in my shed. Anyway, I have a few seals here for resealing stuff. This is for the brake booster to the firewall. This is for the steering column to the firewall. And then there's the heater box seal for the firewall for the whole big heat and AC unit. I've got all the engine components here, other than the cam and lifters. They're on the shelf over there. I got a brand new cam and a lifter kit for it. So this is brand new power window switches. The double for the driver's side and a single for the passenger side. Then here's brand new lock switches for the door locks that go on the door panels. I got a new turn signal stock, and this is the one with cruise and tilt, or a delay and all that stuff for the wipers. That was like $17 on eBay, which I thought was kind of amazing. So, I got a new gas tank sock for the factory sending unit. And then this is this is just rear end stuff here. So this is actually axle seals, because I'm definitely putting all new seals and stuff in that rear end. It's been setting too long. This is a pinion seal, 2 axle seals. And then right here, I've got a pair of bearings. Those that actually come with a set of Mosier axles that I put in my Salon, and I used the seals, but I didn't use the bearings. I'd already put new bearings in that rear end, so I wasn't going to change them out again. These are just stock replacement anyway. But anyway, I've got those to put in it. There's brand new rear brake shoes because it is a drum rear car. There's the wheel cylinders. That is a full engine gasket kit. That is the pre-molded radiator hoses, Gates brand, upper and lower, for that particular turbo Buick for a G-body. So that's a direct fit. I've got a 400 turbo. That's a front pump seal. I've got a rear seal, I think, in my box over there of all the gaskets and stuff. It's marked 400 turbo, so I'm just going to use it. But there's a new front seal and the filter kit. I actually got lucky and found this on eBay, and the guy was selling out some stuff, and he only had one of them, and it's a GM turbo gasket for the turbo. So I went ahead and snagged that. It's like $8 or something. I've got an adjustable vacuum modulator for that 400 turbo. I always change these out when I put a transmission in a car, like the turbo 350s and the 400s. If, like on a turbo 350, if that vacuum modulator is bad, well, 400 too, you have a vacuum line that goes to that. And your vacuum line usually goes either to your carburetor. It's supposed to go to the intake, but it doesn't really matter. If that diaphragm goes bad on that, it will pull transmission fluid out of the transmission into the engine, and it will smoke like the engine's blown up. So if you have a car that you suspect has a blown engine because it's smoking so bad, there's your culprit right there. But anyway, I got a new one, and that's adjustable. It has an adjustment in the end of it for a little pocket flat blade screwdriver, and you can adjust your shift points right there. And it comes with a little pre-bent 90 hose, which is kind of cool. So I got a Turbo Smart boost gauge. Got to have a boost gauge on a turbo Buick car, 100%. You got to know how much boost you're running. I got a few miscellaneous decals, and this is just kind of help make it look stockish. So this is for a 1979 Turbo Regal. This goes on the air cleaner hat. So I am going to install it on the aftermarket one, the cast one that I'm buying. So it'll give it that stock vibe. And then I have dual spout electric fans on for the car, and I have the actual top of core support plate that you'd find on Cutlass's or the Grand National, because they had electric fans. Cutlass didn't, but it had that same top radiator plate. And I've noticed by looking around at those prices kind of went up on those items. But this is Grand National stuff right here, reproductions. This goes on that plate I'm talking about that goes on top of the core support for the electric fan, and that's just kind of give it a stock turbo Buick vibe. This goes on the sun visor, which is just a detail thing for me. So I got a fuel pump block off plate for it because I'm going to be putting an electric fuel pump on it. I've got a lot of miscellaneous new engine parts. So there's rings, there's rod and main bearings. I don't remember what this is. Oil pump rebuild kit. There's a new cam button. I'm going to be putting on a double pumper spread bore Holley carburetor. So I got a quick fuel rebuild kit for it. And then I got the float for the rear bowl with the jet extensions. And that float is actually notched out for those extensions. Because when you get in hard acceleration, the fuel in your rear float bowl goes way to the back of the bowl and can cause fuel starvation. And you don't want that in a turbo car because it will lean that engine out and blow it up. So that's going in that double pumper. I got a electric fan wiring kit, which is a fan probe that'll kick the fan on, and I don't remember the temperatures on that, but that's for dual fans. So that'll be kicked on by a probe in the engine. I won't have to put a toggle switch on an electric fan. I've got new seals for the back of the rotors. Got a pair of Kicker 3.5s for the dash. There's some Russell stainless steel brake hose kit. That's both fronts and one rear. There's a bunch of miscellaneous stuff in there. I'm not sure. There's a double roller timing chain. This is a rebuild kit for the original turbo quadrijet, which I'm not going to be using now. There's a new jam switch. That's a fuel filter for the quadrijet. And this is, I think, an oil filter for it. There's a new water pump right here for it. I guess that's about it, guys. I had a bunch of little crap over here too, but it's just miscellaneous stuff. And I got a little bit more stuff kind of stashed here and there, but that's pretty neat. I mean, this is all that little bitty stuff. It's like $10, $15, $20 little pieces, and then when you add it all up, there's like $500 there probably, you know what I mean? But thank goodness I bought all that stuff back then after I sold that Cutlass Salon. I kind of went on a buying spree and bought a whole bunch of stuff for that Turbo Century, and then when it didn't work out, I was stuck with all this Turbo Buick related stuff. But I'm going to use it now. Well, I've had this spare tire well section in and out probably, I don't know, 10, 12 times probably. But I think I've just about got it. Now I got to pull it back out, do a lot more prep work, but I'm just trying to get the fit right on it. So that's looking pretty decent. I've only got one pair of vice grips up there and then a pair back here, so once it gets clamped, and then I'll have to put some self-drilling screws in it to hold it until I can get some welds on it, and then pull the self-drilling screws and then weld those holes. But it's going to have it, and it'll have its strength back in it. So this will be the only weld joint right through here, but the gas tank brace is right here, so this is overlapping that gas tank brace a little bit, so it's that should give it all kinds of strength in that seam, and then I'll be able to grind it smooth and it'll look like it's never been done. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove all the, when I pull it back out, I'm going to remove the rest of the seam sealer. This actual seam sealer is stuck really good, but the stuff that they put inside the body, it just flakes off. So this, I have to use a knotted cut brush on the grinder to get it off, and it just smokes like you're burning your tires off. So quite the mess, but it's gonna, I did a whole bunch of trimming and fitting and trimming and fitting, and I've got it where it's ready to be put in permanently, other than the fine detail work and some weld through primer work. I still got to weld that flange and grind it, and then, you know, before it can be put in. But man, that was a lot of work just getting that ready for that. So this whole panel here is pretty sloppy since it came undone. It's just paper thin, but that'll push over to that. But it fit pretty good, so I'm really pleased with it. I didn't have to force anything. That'll work, man. Getting closer. So all the flange areas are weld through primed. I've got that flange, I got welded and then ground it because I had a few holes that poked in through there from drilling it out, and then trying to get the piece off, it pulled the metal through. Anyway, everything that's going to be sandwiched got weld through primed, and then I got this finished out. All the edges are dollied and everything. I had to do a couple of spots of welding on this piece where the weld busted through and poked a hole in it. So I went back and welded those spots up and ground both sides. So all this got weld through primed. I got the rest of the seam sealer off of it, and I just remembered I need to clean up this edge. I got to clean this up to bare metal, at least a little bit over. All down through there, we're going to be butt welding it, so I need to do that real quick, I guess. Dang it, I thought I was getting ready to put this thing in. All right, guys, so this thing is getting very close, man. So I got the majority of this tack welded in. I mean, I still got a lot of welding to do on this joint where I butt welded that together. But what I'm doing now is putting self-drilling screws in all where the flanges are. And I've got it self-drilled all up through there, all up in the wheel well up there, and then along the top up there. I had this, I just used clamps yesterday. I had a bunch of little vice grip clamps back here and had all this clamped, so I didn't have to self-drill that. But what I'm using is just some, you know, self-drilling screws. They have the drill bit tip on them, you know. It's 5/16 or 8 millimeter, and I'm using a little cordless impact with a magnetic tip on the end of it. So I buzz those in and try not to strip them out. But it is very, very important to put them self-drilling screws in this. And the reason is you don't want that metal loose on the flanges. And if you just kind of went in and like took it, I've seen guys do this. I actually got a buddy of mine I watched do this one time. He'll take a screwdriver and push in on his left with his left hand, and then he'll tack it with his right, or plug weld it on it with his right. And then he'll just keep working it that way. The importance of having this completely smashed against this with a bunch of screws, it keeps the body from creaking and cracking. These bodies are flexible. I mean, let's face it, I'm using a stock frame. I'm not using some aftermarket badass chassis that has all kinds of support in it to where it takes out body flex. This body is designed to move. So anyway, that is very important to get that smashed up against each other. So I try to put self-drillers in between everywhere I'm going to be plug welding. Now they don't stay in there. So I'll go in and plug weld all these spots here, and then I'll go back and I'll pull the self-drillers out and I will weld up where those were. And all you're doing is just putting more welds on it anyway. But I have this panel completely smashed against that body right there, up there, and up here in the wheel well. So anyway, that just keeps the body from making all kinds of weird creaky crackly sounds when you're driving it. And it's rather obnoxious. So I guess I'll get to plug welding, and after that majority of that panel is plug welded in, all I got to do is finish all the butt welds down here. But I'm probably going to climb up in the trunk to finish that, so because I can, you know, sit down up in here, and that way I'm not leaning over for that whole time. But anyway, I want to make sure this is all plug welded in and done first before I climb up in there. Now I went ahead and put the car on jack stands at all four corners to where it's, I mean, it's kind of level. I know my driveway's not the perfect frame table, but it just pretty much levels the body enough that when you're putting a panel in, it doesn't, like, basically you don't want to weld up. All four size tires on this car are different sizes, and I mean, there's a donut save a spare on the other side. That's a 14. This is a 15. I think that's a 15 over there with a low pro tire. So the car's sitting kind of funny, and if I went in and welded all these body panels up with that car crooked like that, it's going to be a problem. So once it gets all leveled out with its suspension and correct size tires, you know, it's probably going to distort something. So basically making sure my frame is square, kinda, I mean level, kind of square, and then go in and put the stuff in here. So anyway, I did the majority of, you know, I tacked all that flange over there yesterday and put just a couple up here under there to hold it before I did all this stuff, and then leveled the frame and all that, because this is not really going to change. As long as that metal's butted up to each other across there, it's fine. And then I've got the height on my wheel well over here where I needed it. So pretty excited, man. This is it's coming along. It's going to have its strength back in there. That's going to be a real strong joint because the brace for the gas tank's under there, and it's actually setting on that brace. So once I weld this all up, it's actually welding the brace to that flange that I cut. All right, guys, so Uncle Terry brought me a box of spray paint goodies Monday, I think it was, and this was in there. It's a brand new can of rust encapsulator. Now if you don't know, there's two different things here. This is encapsulator, so this is something that you would put on just like, you know, POR 15 or whatever. You basically put it over the rust, and it keeps the rust from growing. It like stops it from growing. This is not a neutralizer like a navel jelly, I think is. You put navel jelly on it, it like eats it and turns it black or something. That is two different things. This is an encapsulator. This doesn't neutralize the rust. So anyway, I went in here and I used my cut brush right there the best I could. Some of the places I couldn't get to, so I used a red Scotch-Brite and finished it off. And then I went through and blew it out, and then used the Prep-All, which Terry actually gave me, on a microfiber, and went in and wiped everything down. And I taped off all the areas that I'm going to be welding, and then I shot it, let a coat set about 10 minutes, and I went back and shot it again. Pretty heavy coats, so it's going to have rust encapsulator on it. This wasn't really rusty, it just had like in corners and edges of like where metal's been put on, it had a little bit of rust around it. So, you know, it's here, I went ahead and used it. But that'll just kind of prolong the life a little bit. So I think I'm going to paint this black, because I may not worry about this up here because you don't see any of this at all. But when the trunk's open, you see through this little pocket right here, and you might be able to catch a little bit of that wheel well. So I might go ahead and shoot some black like up on a lot of this. I'm not going to mask it off or anything. I'm just going to let it fog off on the edge. But anyway, the rest of it will be black. But you know, when I get to the main restoration of the car later, I'll go in there and cut brush the entire floor real good in the trunk, and then it'll get primed and then sanded and painted black. But And I may use Raptor liner in there to help deaden some sound, but that'll work, man. That'll work out pretty good. Now I just got to find some black paint to use. He brought me quite a bit of spray paint stuff. I might go look and see if hell anything will work as long as it's black. Well, I'm having to let my air compressor take a smoke break because that thing, it just runs and runs and runs and doesn't shut off when you're using the blaster and the grinder and stuff. So I have to let it take a break and cool down or it'll just burn itself up. It's already done it once and I've kind of cobbled it back together. So I blasted like the back side of the flange there and this back here. Now I want to do all of the flange all the way around and the back side here and the back side here. And then that'll all get 3M weld through primed because it's surface rusty down there. All right, so last night before I quit, I started tacking this quarter on here, and this was a pretty decent sized gap through here. And as I was tacking, it was moving like it usually does. And it, right in here, it's touching. So there needs to be space in between there so the metal has somewhere to go. And also the weld penetrates well. So I'm gonna have to resplit this with a cutoff wheel and reset it. So that kind of sucks. It just happens. Sometimes you just have to cut it back loose and start again. But I'm working from up here across, and then I'm basically working my way around is what I'm going to do, because all this back here's flanged. So I just want to make sure all my butt welds are lined up where they need to be. So what I've done is I've stuck the taillight extension on there, and I'm just basically checking the fit and everything. And I mean, for a stock part, it basically fits pretty good. Now, in case you find yourself working on a G-body, you've got these holes here. They're in the body and in the quarter, and that's for your studs for your taillight housing. So you can use like 7/16 bolts in there. You have to kind of thread them in there. It's like the perfect size for that. So it'll take out a bunch of slack basically and kind of center that up where it needs to be. But so I'm only putting 2 in it because this one I never removed from the car. But anyway, test fit that because the studs are smaller than that. That has room for adjustment. But I got to cut this thing apart. It kind of sucks. I'd have been well on my way, but sometimes you got to backtrack, and that's exactly what I got to do. All right, so this is the Monte Carlo project, and this is just the little weekend project thing until Steve's car is gone, where I can actually get my wife's car in there and take it off the frame and redo the frame and stuff and work on the bottom of the body of the car. So I'm trying to do easy projects here in the driveway that I can move out of the way if I need to. So I wanted to get the floor pans redone in this car, the quarter panel on, the spare tire well, and work on hammer and dolly work on that quarter over there. And then this car can be put back in the backyard, and I can put all my 55 parts in here and actually lock it. So that's the plan. This is going to be a storage facility because it doesn't have any seats or anything in it. So there's plenty of room to store parts in the trunk and inside the car. So as you're looking at this, I've got quite a bit going on it already. And in case you missed the video, this Monte Carlo is made up from 4 other parts cars here. This is actually one of the parts cars. I've got one really nice 87 T-top that's not here yet. Anyway, I took all parts to make, I had turned this into a parts car, and now I'm turning it back into a viable project car. So this car had been wrecked in the front, and the frame was badly bent. It had been put on a frame machine. They didn't get it straight, so they got it close enough, called it a day. I put this on another chassis from one of the parts cars. This is an 88 Monte Carlo SS chassis, and this is a 373 G80 car, posi unit, so that's awesome. So this is from a Super Sport, so it does have the bigger sway bar, has a rear sway bar, has the jounce bars on the frame and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, the 88 in the backyard, it had 89,000 original miles on it, so all the front end stuff's still tight on this car, so that's really, really nice. Low miles on the rear, basically. But anyway, that frame is now under here. This frame doesn't have a stitch of damage. It doesn't even have a ding in it anywhere, like where it had been running the ditch anywhere. But that's a good, viable frame for that car. So it's setting on there, and then I just kind of hung some of the sheet metal on the front. It's not permanently mounted, it's just sitting on there, and all it's doing is getting it off the ground. And anyway, I used the door off the 88, I used the hood off the 88, and this is the quarter panel off the 88. Now the 88 got sideswiped all the way down, and The T-tops had leaked for so long. The roof's rusty. Both roof floorboards are gone. So I turned it into a parts car. And the 89,000 original mile engine is what I put, or have to put in my wife's 55 four-door. But anyway, this is going to be Turbo Buick V6 powered. It's actually sitting in there, Turbo Buick V6. It's actually sitting in the car right now with a Turbo 400 transmission. So anyway, I'm putting the quarter panel on. I did flange some of it. You'll see it in the video. I explained why I didn't really want to do it, and I just didn't want to pull the back window. I didn't want to pull the deck lid and have to, you know, try to drill all these spot welds out and then take the seams loose up here, get all that crap out of there. So I just spliced it here, here, and across the top, but it's flanged at the back, it's flanged at the bottom, it's flanged in the wheel well. So it's going to be put on mostly like original, but basically just below the body line. And I don't know if I have that video or not. I explained why I did it here, which I have to recut it because the metal tightened up on me. I seam these quarter panels here because it still has a little bit of body line right there. It's not on the body line. It is just below the body line, so the metal will be tight where it was stamped. So that's why you did that. If you cut a quarter panel right down the middle and you seamed another, butt welded another part in there, you're going to have all kinds of warpage, and it's going to be a lot of work to get that back straight, unless you just fill it full of filler and call it a day. But if you get as close as you can to a stamped part of the body, like this body line, it'll be less warpage in those joints because the metal's more solid here than it is down here. So I cut it back from the quarter panel just a little bit, and then down here as well off the body line. But and I do think I have some video clips left of that. But anyway, I started welding it yesterday, but it tightened up on me and started touching, so I'm going to go back in and cut this and relieve it again and then reset it. You don't want your metal touching when you're welding stuff. It'll cause a huge problem. So the spare tire well got put in the car. That was a huge job because I had to remove basically what was left in here, and then I had to remove it from the 88 and then trim it out to fit in here. So that was a big job, but I'm very happy with the end result. It's plug welded on factory flanges just like it would be spot welded from the factory across the top, down the wheel well, down the side, and back here. And this is the only joint right here, and this I have to finish welding. And it's actually where I butt welded it together right here. The gas tank braces into there, so when you climb into the car you only see a little bit of, I only have to grind a little bit basically, but the brace pretty much hides the majority of it, so I don't have to go back in there and grind a whole bunch of crap. And with that brace being there, it's stout, so that worked out pretty good, man. That'll be really nice. Now the car, I'm going to take all the seam sealer out, and all this will get completely re-seam sealed. And it's got weld-through primer in all the joints, and the back behind this got all painted. I used rust encapsulator on it first, then I painted it black. So anyway, it's done good enough for a driveway job, and it should be real nice and bare metal. Hopefully. Well, you'll see when I get it all ground out and filed and stuff. I want this thing to look amazing, and I don't want to have to put filler on these joints. I want to put a couple of coats of polyester on there out of the spray gun and block it out. Should happen. Well guys, it's getting close, so I'm making a round with the welder. I'm skipping about every 6 inches, putting a tack on, working my way around. So it's going to take a long time, probably several hours to get this all tacked up, you know, with the time in between I'm doing. But you know, I've got the majority of the quarter seamed in, and then I've got it started here, and then I've got the wheel well clamped up in there so I can do all the plug welds in there. And then back here I put a bunch of self-drilling screws back here and then along the bottom. So I'm going to weld up all the other holes, plug weld them up, then I'll pull all the self-drillers out and plug weld up those holes. So the quarter fit outstanding, like it fit awesome. So I'm very, very happy. Nice straight quarter panel. I actually feel a little dinger right here. Actually, that's a little high spot right there. Must have been something in the trunk. Little bitty, tiny little high spots. I'll hammer that down a little bit, but it's coming together. It's when I'm done tack welding this all in, I'm not going to leave any little spots. So when I get done grinding it, if there's, which there always is, there'll be little areas, you'll see little holes that, you know, where the tacks didn't quite get up next to each other, I'll fire the welder up and go back and zap them all and regrind it. Because when I want to finish this out by grinding it, and then I'm going to file it, and then I'm going to DA sand it, and I want it to look fantastic in raw metal. I don't want it to be some warped up pile of crap. I'm hoping that with the finesse that I do when I do this like this, I'm hoping that it'll turn out nice enough to where I can just put a couple of coats of polyester primer on the car and it'll block out. So that's what I'm trying to not do, is fill this with filler, like spread on filler, which polyester that you spray out of the gun is kind of about the same thing, just not as thick, you know what I mean? So I'm very, very pleased with that. It's like it fit up very well. It's really crazy if you've never done this before. When you start tacking something in like this, it's a big panel and you're trying to tack it in there, it'll move around on you, and you've got to readjust sometimes several times to get it to lay back down in there, because metal, when it's welded, it moves. Once you zap it, it'll move. So you got to kind of pay attention to where you're at, and just kind of move slow and let it do what it wants to do, and then just make it do what you want it to do when it's done doing what it wants to do, I guess. Yeah, I'm gonna be proud of that, man. That's gonna work out pretty good. I didn't even think about it. I could have been in here tacking this up while I was doing that. Golly. Well, it's time to do another round. I just got done wire brushing it about 3 or 4 minutes ago, so yeah, it's barely warm, so I can go ahead and do it some more. I go really slow when I'm doing my tack welding. Like, I'll spend hours tacking instead of going in and, you know, skipping around and then starting right back and doing it again. It's just it'll keep putting heat in and heat in and heat in. I take my time, and then when I grind, this is the key. This is the absolute key, is when you go back and grind, you've got to weld all the way down here, down and down. Not to mention all the plug weld heads you're going to have to grind down. You got all that grinding to do. So the average person would put a flap wheel disc on a grinder and go at it, and they're just going to warp the living crap out of that, and it'll take a whole bunch of filler to fix it. I'll use my 90-degree angle grinder with a 36 grit disc on it, which is super harsh, but at very low speeds, it's very aggressive on cutting the top of that weld down. So I will grind a little area, like usually, I don't know, half, 3/4 of an inch, maybe 1 inch long. I'll grind about halfway, and then I'll skip over here, grind a little spot about halfway, move over here halfway, halfway, halfway. Because the longer you stay on that with that harsh disc, the more heat's going to go on that panel and cause warpage. So if you do it exactly the way you weld, it will turn out really, really nice. So there's a lot of people that don't understand that the grinding puts just as much heat as the welding does. So if you take all your time tacking in and then you just go crazy with it grinding, it's just going to, you'll just watch that metal sink in, man. You got to take it easy on it. You know, you got to finesse it. But you know, when it's done and I got it all ground and filed and DA'd, I'll show you. I'm going to show that in bare metal up close. And, you know, it ain't going to be perfection. It's not going to be like it was stamped out of a machine brand new. It's going to be about 90% really, really awesome. Because you will have areas, you know, usually if you go through a little bit deeper with your grinding disc, you'll put a little bitty divot in it, you know. And, you know, only human, that's going to happen. But I kind of worried because I'm about out of my Norton Blaze discs. I don't even have enough to do this quarter panel. There's only 3, and I'm going to say it's probably going to take about 10. I don't know, maybe 12. So I guess I better go in there and order another box. Dang it, them things are high. They're almost 50 bucks. All right, guys, it's about 4:45 Saturday evening, and I ran out of MIG wire, and I didn't feel like going over and getting any, so I'm just going to wait and do it early in the morning. So I am done for the night. I'm already pretty sore, and I'm really hungry anyway. I almost got this quarter panel welded. Another, I don't know, hour, maybe another hour, I'd have probably had it. And then there's going to be probably several hours of grinding, because I'm not going to go in and grind it all at the same time. I'm going to grind a little bit and skip a little bit, skip a little bit, you know, try to keep it metal cool. But I'm loving it, man. It's tight. I mean, it is super tight. And it's because I use GM metal, you know what I mean? It's all plug welded at the back, plug welded along the bottom, and all plug welded in the wheel well lip under here. And then it's almost fully butt welded. Just there's still a bunch to do on the top. Up here, there's so much it needs, but this down here is almost fully done. And the trunk floor, I almost got it done. It needs, I've kind of been skipping back and forth. It's going to take a lot as well, but I'm going to have to climb up inside the car to do this back here. It's just too hard to lean backwards and get to it. It's like I'm welding toward myself back here. So I'm going to climb in the car and do that. But anyway, I pulled all the self-drillers out and then plug welded those holes up. So it's going to be a great project car. It should be tight, shouldn't have any creaks and cracks to it. And it's all butt welded joints that I did. It's not overlapped, it's not flanged, so it shouldn't take a whole ton of filler. I am hoping that by the time I get done with my metal finish on it, that I can just put a couple of coats of poly on it. I'm going to be using the Z-Chrome Rust Defender, which is my favorite, bar none. That stuff, I love it. It sands like chalk and it'll fill. So, and you can put it over bare metal. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching.